I'd like to talk today about a concept called isolationism, and it's in reference to the lives of not only people with pervasive developmental disorder and autism spectrum disorders, but also just generally a whole bunch of probably people that follow me as well. A lot of nerds, a lot of like isolated people, and isolationism is separate as a concept from isolation. Isolation is not a thing that many people in modern society are able to achieve, and it's not something you should be looking towards achieving as a person in general. Um, you really need contact with humans, not only to support yourself in terms of resources, but also you really need to have some kind of a human connection with somebody in real life and connect with people in real life so that you're not vulnerable to the woes of the world. So isolation is something there's very few people that will advocate for it, but when you look into the autism spectrum disorder community, it's you're looking at a bunch of people who really would, most of them, if left to their own devices, would just do their own thing on their own, and frankly be pretty happy at it. And sometimes you need to make the case for isolation to these people, and really we do need to avoid true isolation. But that's not what I'm talking about in this video. Isolationism, it was introduced to me as kind of like a political concept, especially around Japanese history. They would say that they were isolationist, so they would deal with other nations as little as possible. And I kind of like that as a social concept as well. Isolationism, it's something that if you value it as a social concept and you integrate it into your life, there's a number of stereotypes around it, like social stereotypes that will cause you to really feel guilt. And I think a different level of isolationism works for just about any type of people. I think a case that isn't made as often as trying not to be isolated completely is also the case for isolating yourself when you seem to be always longing for the presence of another and always outgoing. Really, I think it's very important for people in general to feel not only pride for who they are, but feel completely independent and that they can spend time with themselves and just love who they are and love spending times doing things by themselves rather than just always seeking the companionship of others. So I'd like to make that case. I think for myself, I've kind of moved towards a more isolated lifestyle as of recently. I was kind of pushing myself outwards to other people to be much more social and try and create real life, like try and support real life communities and just be a little bit more outgoing. And I found this very draining. I would come home at the end of the night and just be completely drained and really distracted from any of my goals, the things that I really cared about and wanted to achieve. I've actually made those changes a little bit more, and I feel like if I ignore some of the shames that our society has for people who are isolationists, I feel like I can be a little bit more happy with myself, and I think that's what we should be like going towards as humans. I think if you're more happy going out all the time and being with people, I don't think you should restrict that heavily, but I feel like it's something you need to challenge, and it's the exact same thing if you're always inside and you're never going out. Even like I live somewhat like that right now, and I try and challenge myself to go a little bit outside where I'm comfortable. When I feel too comfortable in something, That's like when you feel too set and too comfortable and too confident in anything, that's when you need to reevaluate what you're doing. Is when you start to feel confident. I I guess that's not really true. That's kind of my own philosophy coming out. I'm not sure if that's truth, but it's what I feel. And I feel for myself, I'm just going to be a little bit, I'm not going to try and force myself all the time to be outgoing and really work with people and communities. I'm not going to force myself like every day or like at least like 3 times a week or whatever it was I was trying before. Or at least once a week. For several years, it was just once a week. I would go out to play Smash Brothers. Um, it wouldn't. It would just exhaust me, and it stopped having value as much for me. And I met a lot of insanely good people through that, and I really care for that community, but um, it's just something I need to experiment with a little bit. If you just experiment with your life a lot, then you just find that you can find things that you think would make you unhappy, and they actually are really what you're seeking. I don't believe that humans, we really know what we want. So that's kind of a little bit about isolationism, some of my thoughts I've been having recently. I just kind of wanted to share them. This series has been kind of directed towards people with Asperger's, autism spectrum disorders, or pervasive developmental disorders. But I'd really like to, at this time, if anyone's listening that just is interested in what I have to say and doesn't fit those criteria, I would really encourage you to look back through my videos, and even though they're in that context and that structure, like the videos in this series, I mean, even though they're in the context and structure of Asperger's, autism spectrum disorders, and pervasive developmental disorders, I feel that there's a good amount that I've seen a lot of people that people with Asperger's tend to refer to as neurotypicals. Maybe I'll cover that in another video, but I've seen a lot of miscommunication, and like we're not really that different as people. We're all people, and we all have similar motivations, and we all struggle with things. So I'm getting really general, so I think I need to cut this off. But I'm gonna upload it anyway. Thank you all for watching, and please take care.